Whenever we were talking about radicals, square roots, cube roots, etc., and we ran into a negative number underneath a square root, we said that it was not real, because we said that we cannot take a real number, multiply it by itself, and come up with a negative number. So instead, we have another category of numbers called the imaginary numbers for dealing with square roots of negative numbers. So we define this number I to equal the square root of -1, which means that I squared is equal to -1. So things like 3i, -i, -5i, anything of the form bi, where b is any real number other than 0, are what we call imaginary numbers. So then things like 2 plus 3i, 4 minus I, -1 minus 5i, anything of the form a plus bi, where a and b are any real numbers, those are what we call complex numbers, where a is what we call the real part of that complex number, and then the bi is the imaginary part of that complex number. And notice that this means that any real number can also be classified as a complex number, just by letting b equal 0. For example, if we really wanted to, we could write 7 as 7 plus 0i to make it look like a complex number. And the whole purpose of these imaginary numbers is to allow us to simplify square roots of negative numbers. So the square root of -a becomes I times the square root of a. We use the imaginary number I to take care of that negative underneath the square root. So like the square root of -100, we previously said this was not real. But now we can simplify this as I times the square root of 100, and then the square root of 100 is 10, which gives us 10i. The square root of -18 is the same as I times the square root of 18, and then we can simplify the square root of 18 as the square root of 9 times 2. The square root of 9 is 3, so we bring that out in front, and we're left with 3i times the square root of 2. The negative square root of -8. So we're just going to carry this first negative down as is, and then we're going to have I to take care of this negative underneath the square root, leaving us with a positive 8 under the square root. And then we can simplify the square root of 8 as the square root of 4 times 2. The square root of 4 is 2, so that comes to the outside, giving us -2i square roots of 2.